This is Donald Wade, FTT210 Muzzleloader Lab. For this lab, this module, we're doing preliminary brass cleanup, inlet of the lock, and rough fitting of the butt plate and toe plate. And then, like I said, preliminary cleanup of the brass. We're going to be using various rasp, chisels, palm cutting tools, Prussian blue, and a properly sized screwdriver for the screws, some various sandpaper. I got a bench vise, and that's what we're going to use for this work. Let's get it. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the lock. It's got a pretty decent fit as it is. I do have to push it in a little bit to get it fully seated, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this non-drying Prussian blue. It's like your inletting black. Put it on a little brush here. It didn't take a whole lot, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush it on the edges here. Get a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to brush it on the edges. I don't need a whole lot. And what this will do is this is going to highlight on the stock the high spots. Any high spots that are going to cause any sort of binding and anything like that. For this particular project, I don't really want to mess with the metal surface because I want to remove, because it already fits, you know, for the most part, so I don't want to remove any metal. But I want to get a pretty even coat all along that edge. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set it down in the spot. And I'm going to go ahead and push it down in there. Alright. And then we'll pull it out. Okay, so we already see some high spots where I'm not worried about on this lip. So much, because that is as far down as I want it to go. What I'm more worried about are these little edges here. Let me pull this. Or the edges, you know, on this these rough edges here. I've only got a couple little spots. I'm not worried, like I said, I'm not worried about these flats because those are already cut deep enough, but I can see that I'm gonna need to remove a little bit on these radiuses. I got a little bit of blue there and a little bit up here on the top. But what I'm going to do, because I don't want to move too much, I'm going to use this flat, and I can use the one that the schoolhouse provided, this little flat chisel, but I'm going to use it as a scraper. I'm not really gonna cut. I want to use it as a scraper to move as little material as possible. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and I'm not worried about it up here on top where it's smudged. Basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to remove the blue to where I want a consistent pattern all the way around. And if I need to, I can come back in with various sandpapers to get it where I'm happy with it. Get some right here on this corner, and I can use a round gouge if I need to, but like I said, I don't want to remove a whole lot of material because I want tight fitting. I don't want gaps. So I want to keep it as tight as I can, but I want it to be able to, you know, the way these things are designed is they're designed to hold together, but parts can be repaired in the field. Okay, and so what I'll do now is I'll take a little bit of sandpaper. Where did my little, there it is. And I'm going to take this and I'm just going to kind of smooth out these. This is a 120 grit, and I just want to kind of smooth it out a little. I don't really want to get onto the edges. I just want to smooth out where I did the little scraping. Okay, and then we'll add a little bit more Prussian blue and see, again, it's just a thin coat around the edge. And basically what I'm looking for is I want it to drop in, and I want it to be able to not shift around and drop back out. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll place this back in. Bam, look at that. Alright, we'll press it down, pull it back out. I think that's pretty good. This, and I sanded this a little bit when I first got it, just kind of cleaning up some of these cuts and getting some of them edges out of there. Like I said, I'm not concerned with this blue on this lip. I'm not concerned with this on the face here. That's all going to sand out. But one thing that I do want to do is, and I've already done this, but what I want to do is I want to put this back in place. Okay, and I want to do a full cock, and I want to make sure that this hammer on the lock is not binding up on the stock. Okay, so what I did was I went and I put the two-piece trigger okay, put it in. That way, okay, I can lock this back and I can see if I need to make any clearances. Okay, and I've already made, I pull the hammer all the way back to make sure that it locks. Let's go ahead and reset that. Okay, so what I want is I want this to come all the way back to make sure that it locks full cock, okay, without having to really push down in there. And what ended up happening is I had to notch out on the stock to where this hammer was catching, and it wouldn't let it go without me having to really, you know, wrench down on it to get it to go. So I cleared that, and then I was good to go after that. But I'm happy with that. And the next step after that is we are going to run and do our brass prep, and I will get that switched over and we'll take a look at it and go from there. Okay, so moving on to the brass, I've done some on this this trigger guard. But what I did was I took some fine files. These are jeweler files, and then I also have these sanding sticks. So what I did initially, and we want to get all the casting marks out, and clean it up, you know. And on this particular piece, I had there's casting, you know, you've got casting marks in here, and I'm not sure what they use to cast the brass, like what mold they use, but it leaves, you know, casting marks where you know, there's voids in the mold, and then you'll have these little spots every now and again on a couple of these edges, and on the rounds, and then but primarily in these tight little corners. And I've got these triangle jeweler files, these small files that'll fit down in there, and I just go real slow, make sure that I follow the contour, because I don't want one side higher than the other. And then on some of these bigger flats, you know, I'll use a bigger file, a flat single cut file, and I can square those up. When it comes to using sandpaper, I'll use blocks on the flats, which keeps it square and keeps it straight. Using a finger, you know, if I take this 150 grit sandpaper and I start sanding, okay, my thumb is going to make an impression, and going to round edges. So if you take your thumb and you put it on the workpiece, my thumb will conform around whatever workpiece. It won't be flat. I'll round off the edges and stuff like that. So what I'll do is I'll use a block to keep everything nice and flat, and I'll run one pass. I won't go, you know, here and then move. I do one long pass. And another thing that you can do is you can take a piece of tile and you can glue down some sandpaper, and you can place that down there and you just run it back and forth the full length, and you'll get a more uniform surface. On this particular piece, I'm going to have to do these edges a little bit. I don't know if the camera will pick that up. Those little casting marks, okay, I'll have to get those out, and then up here in the front I'll get those out. But on some of this other area, you know, I can use the sandpaper, and then I'll fold the sandpaper, and that's where these little sanding sticks come in. And these bend. Basically it's foam with, you know, sandpaper on the edges, on the outside, to where it'll kind of form in there to the radius and the contours that I need it to. And that's for the finer sanding. But I'm going to start with 150, and I'm going to work my way up. I've got some 600 grit, and that's probably where I will end up stopping altogether on the finishing piece. But for this, I'm going to run, I've got some 120 here, I've got 150, I've got 200, and then we'll do the rough cleanup on that, and we'll stop that at the 200. We'll stop that at the 220. For the thimbles, it's the same thing. What I'm probably going to do is I'm gonna take because these look pretty good, and I don't want to absolutely destroy them. I will probably fit these on a wooden dowel, or a bolt. I can run a bolt with some nylon washers and run it in a drill, and then I can take probably 200 to 220 and just run the drill, and because I don't want to take off a lot of material. And that's the thing with this brass, is you'll take off a lot of material really quick if you're not careful. On this thimble, the middle thimble, I'll clean some of this up. I've got a little bit of casting marks here. I'm not going to do the same thing as I do with this thimble. So I do notice that on this particular one, these little grooves that are, you know, cast in here aren't as smooth and shiny as these are. So what I may do is I may try to find myself a super fine round file. This one's even too big, and kind of match it, and see if I can't get these cleaned up inside. Another thing that I can do again is I can take a piece of sandpaper and I can fold it, and I can run it, and that may be what I do. But we'll see. I may run a triangle file and get down in there. just a little bit. See if I can't smooth it out. But what I'm going to do now is I'll run some more sandpaper on the underside of this. You won't see a whole lot of it anyway, but and I'll run some sandpaper down through here, just as a preliminary. And the whole idea is to prep the metal surface or the metallic surfaces for the stock. So you're gonna size everything up before you work on the stock, and what that's gonna do is, if I take these pieces and I put them and I start inlaying them on the stock with these unfinished, once these get finished, it's going to change the diameter, it's going to change the measurements, it's going to, even if it's a thousandths, you know, it's going to change the way that it mounts. And I want the attached pieces good before I move to the inletting on the stock. Okay, and then of course we've got the ramrod, and that'll be, you know, something that I'll take care of as well. But I don't want to take the ramming end. I don't want to mess with the dimensions of that, but I want to smooth the outside. So for now, and right now I have the butt plate mounted up in this little wood vise here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a straight cut file, a single cut file, and I'm going to start in the corner, and I'm going to work my way out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one pass and check and see where I'm taking it off and where I'm not taking it off. Where I take it off is going to be a high spot. Keep this as level as I possibly can. Same with the workpiece. I've got it screwed into a block that's attached into the vise, and I'm just going to start smoothing this out. Keeping even pressure all the way down. And I can already see I'm making good contact all the way across. So I'm going to keep running until I get consistent all the way down through there. Now that I've done several passes one way, keeping the brush clean, or the file clean, I'm going to come back the other way. I'm liking that. Okay. And then I can take a little round file. If I want to keep this rounded, I can just run this like so. Okay, it's even. And then when I go to do this radius, it'll be the same way. Okay, with the file. Start on one end, and I'm going to go all the way down the full length. Okay, so I'm going to do this and I'll get back to you here in a few minutes when I get that ready to go. And I can do this top edge as well. Once that is good, I can start the inletting process, and then we'll come back and we'll do the edges, the outside. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Alright, so basically we got this all straight out. I've got my impression blue on there. I've got a center line mark on the top of this and on the top of the stock to make sure that when I put this thing on there, it is as centered as I want it to be. And we're going to take I've got a nylon end on this little mallet here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to line that up. Okay. And I'm going to hit it down here at about a 45 on the end, and that's going to give it the downward and the inward. And then we'll pull this off, and it should leave high spots. Obviously I know that some's got to come out. I'll do down here first, and then we'll repeat this process until we get it all done up, so I can see. We'll bring the camera around, but I can see we've got a little bit of high spot down here, and obviously up here has got to come out. So again, we'll get our scraping tool and gouges, and we can start getting some of this wood out of here. Okay. Take a little bit at a time. And then I'm going to run a larger, because we have a 90-degree angle here, but yet we've got a radius in here, so I'm going to kind of cut a 90-degree. And then we continue the process until we get it just right. So I'll add some more Persian blue. Line it back up. Better. So we'll come back around and see. You know, we got high spots that are going to come out. We'll start running them on the outside, and we'll leave a little inlay for them. Go ahead and run the file. The goal is to have a consistent pattern all the way through. When we cut, it's easier to cut with the grain than against it. You decrease the risks of ripping out any of the wood. All I want to do is kind of smooth this out some. I believe the more time you take in prep, the better your result is going to be. And then we keep going. Keep doing the process. All right, I'm going to continue on and we'll come back. Okay, so here we are after preliminary brass cleanup. You know, we removed some of these casting marks, did a little bit of sanding. I went up to 220 on each of these, the trigger guard, the thimbles, the end cap. But for this week, what we're really focusing on is inletting of the lock. We've added our screws and the washers there. Fits real nice. And then we've got the butt plate and the toe plate. Alright, so No, they don't match up perfectly down here on the back side, but that's not a big deal. That'll be taken care of later on. I did notice one thing that, you know, I was having an issue with in doing this, is that this particular stock was I guess rough cut, and it was thinner down here at the, you know, the base. But I don't see an issue with it. A little bit of file work will make all that fit real nice. We've got a little bit of lips, you know, on either side of the butt plate up here on the top, and then up here on the top as well. So like I said, I think a lot of that's going to come out with file work. I got to figure out how, instead of doing such a steep decrease here, I got to figure out what I want to do, you know, to kind of smooth all that out, maintain the round profile, without making any sharp edges up here. As I continue to do this, I'll put it up to my shoulder, and again, this one is not going to be used. I may fire it, you know, once, twice, just to make sure it operates like it's supposed to. But this is probably going to be a display piece, probably over a fireplace or something like that. So I want it to look good, obviously, but and I want it to function, but I want to kind of go for the antique look of this. So I want to make sure that it's, you know, if I've got some bangs and nicks, I'm not worried about it. I want it to look like it's been used. But we're gonna fix all this as this program continues, and we will make improvements where we need to make improvements at. For these, all of the brass components, I'm going to continue to polish, and you know, get a lot of these marks out. So you can see a little bit on the thimble. I don't know if that's showing up or not. You got some of these darker spots. They're a little bit low, so I'm going to continue to work on those as this whole build continues on. So this is it for this week, and we will pick back up on the next module. Till next time.